Hi, everybody. Welcome again to Steven Universe Revisit. I'm Jackeline of the Trans Panda system. I'm not effective, I'm literally just the host, and this is Alex.
Hi, Jacqueline.
Am I the host in the plural sense or the podcast sense right now? Many
Yes.
questions to be had. Um, Before we get to today's episode, actually, Alex, I wanted to share a bit of information that I discussed with our partner about last time's episode. It's just a short little bit, and I just wanted to share this
Oh,
information.
I feel like I know what y'all are going to start talking about. Go ahead.
Yes, in last episode we talked about the relationship of gender with the gems, and I believe we used the phrase "woman light" to describe the non-binary element to the female presenting gems. Uh,
Yes, I called them discount women, and I think I
Discount
need to
women,
be
yeah.
more clear about why I called them discount women. It's because the gender of the gems, like the gems are basically a one gender race, and all of them are extremely feminine presenting. And if they're not femme, then they're butch. We'll talk about Steven Universe's treatment of butches later, but because there fails to be any real gender
Oh,
diversity amongst the gems, the show itself is not
Alex.
equipped to tackle the conversation.
Oh,
And therefore, I had very strongly felt that the representation that the show was providing was not as adequate as it could have been. Okay, sorry about that. You can continue.
okay, and the reason why I wished to bring that up is merely for the reason that our partner, when they were younger, and just being a high schooler into Steven Universe, that learning of the knowledge that the gems were non-binary, regardless of the larger details that we would normally be discussing on this episode, that they felt that even though that they presented and were identified as female in the show, that they were still non-binary in I was thinking of tacking something on there, but I think just still being non-binary, and like that's the end of the sentence, is that it's, as somebody young with the LGBT space, it helps them come to grips and start thinking about that kind of identity more and more. And it was one of the elements that helps them come to realize through their own non-binary identity. And I just wanted to bring that perspective to the table simply for the reason that I didn't consider it, and that I'm just happy to talk to our partner that uh, something that may not personally like appeal or like feel like it has a benefit to me now that I'm older, still may have a benefit to somebody who's like very newly being introduced to the concept of LGBT identity. And I just wanted to say and acknowledge that for the sake of just being informative and caring about uh, people who see the same perspective, I guess.
By the way, I'm sorry if it sounded like I was hijacking the conversation. I just wasn't sure that I made my points clear in the last episode, and I feel that it may have come off as somewhat reductive
It's
by
okay.
some my more crass comments. Quite
I,
frankly, Steven Universe. The later this series lives, the more this series lives, you'll see what I'm talking about and why exactly I feel the way I do.
I
I'll just have to say that for right now.
I think part of why our partner also said it is that they were in the room but could only hear what I said after you said something. So they didn't actually hear what you said, if that's anything. But I don't really have any other thoughts on that topic past that, and simply wish to be informative.
Oh no, it's good. I just wanted to make sure that y'all thought I wasn't trying to hijack something.
Nope, nope, I don't think so. You're good. But finally, getting to the actual episode at hand, today's episode is season 1, episode 19, Rose's Room. And I have to say, I quite like this one. I thought this was a very well maintained episode in the grand scheme of things. Normally, I would start going off with a plot. Are you okay with that, Alex?
Go ahead.
All right. Before I start, I don't know if it's the Roxas in us speaking, but like a third of every time we say your name out loud, there's a part of us that goes like, "Oh yeah, Axel," like the character from Kingdom Hearts. It's like, no, you idiot. It's
I'm
Alex.
Axel now.
Ah, jeez. Oh man.
No, I'm still Alex.
Okay. All right, but season 1, episode 19, Rose's Room starts off with Steven eating 4 cans of not cream corn. It was
Yeah, creamed corn.
Oh, it was cream corn. Okay, I
It might not have been cream, but it definitely was canned corn, which
yes,
Jill informed us during the episode has no nutritional value.
corn.
Corn generally has no nutritional value.
Yeah, speaking as a diabetic, I learned that it's basically just sugar,
That's how
nature's
a lot
sugar.
of fruits are.
Yeah, but isn't it starch? But yeah, so Steven is eating 4 cans of corn, and we find out the reason why he's just eating 4 cans of corn instead of like I don't know, putting it in like a bag or something, is that if he eats all 4 of them, then it's not really a sweepstakes. It's more like just trade it in and you get a free ticket for mini golf, right? Because he wants each of the gems and him to go mini golfing together because he cares about his family and all that
Yes.
stuff. You said that one of the uh, can corn mascot characters on the label looks like a VeggieTales character. Um,
Yeah, the creamed corn mascot looks very specifically like Larry, the cucumber from VeggieTales.
which is
I
curious
thought that
because
was really cute.
I was wondering, like, it had like a top hat and like a monocle, right? Because I was assuming it was like the peanut
That's
guy.
the peanut guy. There isn't a peanut guy, but there is another green guy, a
Oh no no no
more
no! I
significant recurring character.
no,
His name is Archibald
yes,
Asparagus.
Archibald asparagus. No no no! I'm not talking about VeggieTales. I'm talking about like the mascot, the
Oh,
peanut,
Mr. Peanut.
Mr. Peanut. Is that really it? It's just Mr. Peanut.
I believe it is Mr. Peanut.
Okay, well he's gonna be a dead peanut again after I'm through with him. Regardless,
Remember Baby Peanut?
I wish I didn't. But speaking of remembering things that I wish I didn't, that's when the gems unfortunately inform Steven that a new threat has come up and they unfortunately need to take care of it, so they don't have time to hang out with Steven like they promised, which upsets Steven that things aren't going his way. So from basically that point till the next morning, he starts playing what I'm going to affectionately refer to as Video Game the Video Game, which is every video game ever made. But just kidding, it's actually it's the Golf
It's
Quest
basically
mini.
Final Fantasy, but
It's
had
sprinkled with a bunch of other video game references, like The Legend of Zelda with "It's dangerous to go alone, take this," or Sonic with Dr. Robotnik, or probably a bunch of other things, honestly.
yeah, it's a weird love fusion of Final Fantasy and NES Golf. It's funny because Steven is playing an N64, but the graphics and the graphics that are implied and the sound fonts are NES.
Yeah, there's a bunch of things. It felt like I'm looking on the wiki page for this episode because I wanted to try to be. This is the first time we're doing this, by the way, for each episode, is to try to look over the wiki for trivia or other details while we're doing the podcast to try to keep things a little more streamlined, I guess is the best way I could put it.
Yeah,
But it says here that it's oh, this is always fun. I always love it when a wiki does this because it's questionable immediately. Is when they say the secret ending in Steven's video game can be a reference. Oh wait, the mini golf game
oh,
is a
you
combination.
swore.
No, I'm the host. I'm failing at every reading of the word. Oh, well, the can be is the part. I'll remember to censor that. Anyway,
It's okay.
it's fun how it said it was also a combination of Pokemon and Earthbound. I'm not 100% sure. I see the
Pokemon and Earthbound?
that's what it says right here. It says, excuse the fact that I misread the first
Well,
time.
I wouldn't really say that.
Yeah, I honestly was like thinking more along. Oh, wait. Two of the
it,
characters Steven
it
played.
literally is more Final Fantasy and had a love child with NES Golf than anything else. I feel if you think it's Pokemon or Earthbound, then you generally haven't played Final Fantasy 1. Like, that was a hugely influential game. It basically created the RPG genre. You have to play Final Fantasy 1 to generally to understand Final Fantasy references, specifically Final Fantasy references. And now I sound like a gatekeeper. Oh my goodness. I mean, I'm
I've
not trying to
never.
gatekeep. It's just that cultural references,
It
they work
always
very, very differently.
it always tends to loop back to the first one. But regardless, it makes the argument that the characters that Steven plays bears a strong resemblance to Misty and Brock, although, like I said, I kind of get more Final Fantasy vibes than I do those. Regardless, the video game trivia
Tifa
assertion
and
aside.
Barrett from Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah. I said the robot that he plays with reminded us of the educational Flash videos that we used to watch online when we were like in grade school. But I unfortunately cannot remember the title, even if I tried. But around this time, Steven just plays the game all night long up until the morning. It's daylight out, and he finally beats the final boss, who looks like Dr. Robotnik, but really muscular and 20 feet tall, who wants to be the best golfer in the universe. And he gets the
Well,
secret.
who said Robotnik wasn't 20 feet tall and the best golfer in the universe and really buff?
That's a good point. We never we never compare Sonic to other human beings. Perhaps that is almost comically a lie, but regardless, um, he manages to get to the secret ending of the game, and this is something. No, they still do this in games. Yeah, what am I talking about? That's silly. But the atmosphere of secret endings has been an interesting cultural shift from back in the N64 to even GameCube PS3 days. Uh,
Yeah, secret endings were basically an incentive for you to 100% a very short game that had a difficulty spike somewhere near the end of it.
Now it's just a battle
They're,
pass. Anyway,
yeah, they're basically artificial and secret endings are basically there to artificially extend playtime.
which isn't inherently bad considering it like can help you engage with a game that may otherwise struggle to keep you in purely based on gameplay. And I could
Yeah.
support it. It's sort of like how the Chow Garden in Sonic incentivize you to actually play the levels and because you get points and stuff like that. It's a whole complicated sequence that's it's a balance of video games that we
Man, the
probably are.
Chow Garden is a mechanic that really appeals to the RPG, the grind maniac in me. I'm unfortunately gonna have to call it. I love grinding in video games. I'm sort of a masochist. Okay. We're getting way off topic. It's just that the culture of video games is so like dense and
Yeah,
fascinating.
no, that's true. Speaking of us like rambling incoherently, unendlessly, that's when the gems arrive and show Steven this artifact they call the wailing stone, which you just press the button and it makes a large wailing noise that
Oh,
is
that
very.
actually reminds me. This is going to come back later. So,
Mhm.
viewers, please keep this in your mind. It's a secret tool that will help us later.
Yes. All of that rambling and wailing, I tied it all the way back. It all comes full circle,
It came full circle!
much like the circle in the wailing stone contraption, which makes us think of one of those fancy bladeless fans, which can tell you that I'm over the age of 20 because I'm thinking about household appliances like that. But besides that,
I
uh,
think generally poor people still do have like those kind of fans. I wish I had one.
there's one right
Okay,
next to
okay,
me.
let's.
I'm
We're
going to
getting
wear
off
this.
topic. We're getting off topic. We're getting off topic.
I think it's fun.
It is
Besides the
fun.
point, the gems now finally trying to engage with Steven accidentally like block the the secret ending to the game, making Steven even more upset that like absolutely nothing is going his way as he's trying. And that's when he says that he wishes he like things could go his way. And that's when, for the first time, Steven's gem activates and well, it doesn't it activates the door to the temple. I know it's called the temple, but is there anything more to the name than that? I,
He activates Rose's room.
well, yes, Rose's room. I didn't know if it was like the crystal temple or just the temple, but yes,
It,
and
I don't even think it has an official name, if I'm being honest.
you sure? I could have sworn like they usually call it
I
like
mean,
the.
they call it the temple, but is that its official name?
Let me see. I'm actually on the wiki. It's just called Crystal Temple. Yeah, I was right. It's just called the Crystal Temple, and that's it.
So it doesn't even really have a name. Okay.
Well, I guess technically I was correct with its name though, so I'm going to pretend I'm very smart for that. But
You should pretend you're very smart for that. You basically gave it a name before we knew it, and it ended up being correct.
yes, I'm going to pretend that's how it works. But
Well, that's how it works now.
that's
Okay,
how it works
we
now.
need to get back to the synopsis.
The crystal gems like warn Steven that he shouldn't go in there, but Steven, upset from the everything, like goes like, "No way, you're not allowed in here. This is my like he does that thing, where like things can go his way, and he goes
He's a
in.
little child, so he throws a little bit of a fit because he can't get what he wants.
Yep, and he goes in and finds a sort of not liminal space. It's just sort of a vacuum of.
Wow, no, it technically is a liminal space. Jill!
It
Oh,
is.
Jackeline.
Jacqueline and Jill. I guess
Jacqueline
so.
and Jill! Jill Jacqueline! Jacqueline Jill! Yeah! It does count as a liminal space.
Oh, really? I thought it was
Yes.
like a space. Okay, well, I learn something new every day. But it is just sort of a void full of clouds and not much else. And Steven accidentally, like, he says, like, oh, it's kind of empty in here. Not even a bed or anything. And that's when, like, a bed is suddenly summoned. And then he, like, realizes that this is a space where you can just wish for what you want and you'll just basically get it. He wishes for a was it a quadruple or
Quadruple bunk bed.
quadruple bunk bed and just
Yeah,
grows
he
super
beat
tall,
Emmett to the punch.
just like so many others did. Doesn't slide, and he summons a whale, which Alex knows this, but the whale, it's like a tiny little what I could only describe as in an MMO when you get like a little like animal to fly around you to for player customization. It's that kind of size of whale where it's just like hovering around Steven and it coos and stuff. And a fun fact is that it's actually voiced by the same voice actress as Rose Quartz. This is her first role in the series, if I'm not mistaken.
This is her first role in the series.
Okay, yes. Steven just kind of he wishes for the secret ending to the game. It uh
Actually, here's something I want to point out before we continue. We don't actually know if this is the real secret ending to the game because everything in the room is basically constructed out of what Steven feels that he is owed or desired.
yeah,
One thing that's been very heavily emphasized on is that Rose's gem abilities are brought on by periods, swells of passion, emotion. Stephen has to be feeling something very strongly for his gem to work or activate in the way he needs it to. He basically needs to feel something very, very strongly if the gem is ever to work. And this is the first episode. Like the gem is obviously activated before, but it's never done anything on this scale. This is
Hmm.
the first episode that you truly do feel that you are in foreign territory with gem culture.
Oh yeah. Also, you saying it and explaining it like that just made me think of Steven like putting his like hands to his temples and going, "My superpower is high empathy." Uh,
Technically, yes, that is his superpower.
his
You
superpower is
are
I need to be
absolutely
hyper
correct.
empathetic. Hyper empathetic is a superpower. Very fun. Steven though starts to get kind of freaked out by the room because he like starts wishing for food and like it comes down, but it can't actually be food because it just immediately poofs back into clouds, and that's when he wishes to go back home. And he goes into Beat City to get like real donuts, and he finds that none of the crystal gems are there. Where he says like, "Oh, whatever, I didn't want to see any of you anyway." And he goes to the donut shop, and he walks up to Lars and Sadie, who are standing there,
Oh,
smiling,
their
unblinking.
their dialogue and the way they move in this scene is actually super funny. It's
Both of them
so funny.
both of them speak at the exact same time,
They're
and they go,
so
"Hi,
out of
Steven."
character in like the most beautiful way.
Like Steven asks for donuts before they finally say anything, and they go, "Here are yours donuts, Steven." And he goes, "But I only asked for what?" And like he has a whole bag, and they like, "Hi, Steven, we love you, bye bye." And they start sliding away in a way that I can only describe as like animatronics being pulled out of the dark ride scene, if that makes sense. They clearly aren't walking, is the best I can say.
It's such a funny sequence because we as the audience know something's up. Steven hasn't entirely caught on because he's a very naive little baby, but like it's such a good moment.
Oh yeah, and he tries to follow them out, but he
It's
finds
very
that
good at being funny and horrifying at the same time. Like this is the first.
it's a very good
No, no.
balance.
Frybo is, yeah. Frybo is the first horror episode. Cat Fingers is another horror episode. The implications of that is extremely troubling. This is the third horror episode in this. Well, then there's so many birthdays, which is the third, and I'm gonna be honest. I think so many birthdays might be the worst episode of the show so far. It just, I mean, while I didn't mention this, I don't think I
Really,
ever
I'm
mentioned it during
surprised.
the episode, and I feel like I should have.
I would have thought it was
But
Onion Trade.
oh, I blocked that episode out of my memory. You're right. Onion Trade is the worst episode.
And it's another
But
horror episode of
it
kind
is another
of.
horror episode.
Well,
Uh,
yeah. Did you have anything else to say?
yeah, so many birthdays also draws emphasis to the fact that Steven's gem abilities are emotion based,
Hmm.
which is something that I didn't bring up in the episode because, like, the emotion based abilities of Steven had already been shown off before. And while so many birthdays was a good opportunity to talk about it, it just it's just such a dry episode that I did not I it completely slipped my mind.
Yeah, I think I talked about it like at length, where it's just like the concepts it follows are things that I've seen before, I've seen it done again, and c'est la vie.
Yeah, I imagine y'all did. I'm just kind of looking back on that specific commentary we did, and I'm just like, maybe I should have mentioned that. Oh well, the episode is just so off-putting that I really couldn't be bothered to mention it. Okay,
Speaking
continue
of
synopsizing.
off-putting,
Yeah.
Steven runs into Onion, who stands there as Steven tries explaining. Yeah, that was good. Steven tries like asking where Lars and Sadie went. I flipped the words in my mind. And Onion actually is probably the most in character in this episode, where he stands there, just kind of looks at him and doesn't really do anything, and then Steven like
Oh,
just puts a
he's
donut.
also the only other character that has his expression. And given what Greg's little well, here's the thing about like well no. Continue synopsisizing. When we get to Greg, I'll finally talk about it. It would
Can
yeah.
you tell that I have ADHD? Anyway, uh, so yes, and then he goes like around the town and like he finds Connie standing at the beach, but the waters to the ocean are like, oh no. Before he goes to Connie, he goes to the fry place, and Frybo is the one serving fries. There's a lot of like references to past episodes in this episode, and there's a genuinely like really effective like kind of horror moment for kids where like Frybo puts like the bits down, so he's like, it's not really into bits right now, and then Frybo puts down another like uh like a serving of bits, but because it's just reusing the same animation, so it just places the bits over the bits that he already placed down in time and space, and they just like clip overlap into one another seamlessly, which freaks Steven out. And that's really using the medium of animation to its effect, and I genuinely really liked that moment. That was a very
Yeah, it's a good moment. Y'all have good taste.
yeah, this is why I want some of those bits right now. Hopefully they'll keep replicating like that. And then Steven goes to the beach where he sees Connie and the glitching ocean waves, like I saw, and he starts really panicking, which is when the like he sees all the towns members have like gone weird, simplistic faces, and he's running through them. And another small fun detail is that is the Steven Universe has two, maybe more obviously, but like it has a style for characters that are a distance away, sort of like getting back into video games, how like models will be low poly when rendered from a distance, so in order to save space, and in animated shows it's to save
Budget.
budget and clarity, I guess is the best.
And the sanity of the animators.
Oh, don't worry, they already lost that a long time ago. But speaking of losing your
It's
sanity,
only gonna get worse from here, folks.
yeah. Speaking of losing your sanity, Steven starts running through them, like panicking more and more and more. And I can't remember like specifically what happens. Does Steven like fall through the ground or something? I'm trying. I'm thinking of remembering that, right?
I
So
believe he does fall down,
oh,
yes.
yes, the ground turns into water and he falls through, ending up at his dad's car wash. Okay, yes, that's when we see Greg. And Greg is like, he comes in and he's speaking to Steven like Greg. He is like speaking like a human being. He doesn't look odd. He's being sympathetic like Greg would. And Steven finally has a moment to relax, and like he's talking about how like panicked and weird the town was getting because of it. And Greg says some very inspiring life advice where, at least he told the truth. And Steven went,
At least he told the truth.
yeah, I guess I did. And that's when Greg says, oh, it's it's so much on the delivery. I do love Greg's voice actor. He does such a good job voicing Greg, but it was something like, well, friendship and wholesome friendship grew together and nobody got arrested. And like
It's
something
funny. It's so funny that they're making fun of these cheesy conventions in media. Given the direction that this show will go, that line is going to bite this show very hard later on.
but I think it was extremely, extremely funny. And he just goes,
It,
"Meow,
it's
meow."
it's so much funnier in retrospect.
I guess that's fair. And
Oh yeah,
Steven,
now is the best time to actually bring this up. Greg and Onion are the only two characters who are rendered normally, which is what I was going to say earlier, it was best to bring it up now when Jill had finished
Mm-hmm.
that part of the synopsis. And it's somewhat depressing in Onion's case because the characters who are fully rendered in this little in this facsimile of Beach City are characters that Steven presumably, like, it's heavily implied by the way Greg is normal that the characters Steven has rendered in his mind the most are the people who he knows the most. And as for Onion, what that says about him is that what we saw in Onion Trade is literally it. Like, it has some rather unfortunate implications for Onion's character.
Yeah, and Lars and Sadie were rendered, but they did that weird thing, so we're going to call that a weird half.
Lars and Sadie were rendered, despite the fact that they are not as close to Steven as Greg is. I believe it is simply because he goes to them on a regular basis, whereas the citizens of Beach City are distant enough from Steven to where they wouldn't be rendered completely in his head because he doesn't process them entirely as real people yet.
That's fair. I mean, yeah, he's young. That's kind of just how it is at that age.
It's also how it is with people you just don't know very well. You're not really going to have a developed idea of who they are. They're going to always have some element of foreignness to them until you know them. All right,
Yeah,
you can.
so I hope
continue.
everybody watching this, where I introduce ourselves with a different name every episode, doesn't have any weird feelings about that. Regardless,
If you have weird feelings about that, I will hunt you down and I will shoot you.
with a Nerf gun. Anyway, in Minecraft. Uh, uh, that's when Steven realizes, with Greg's like glitching out, is Steven tries to eat one last donut and it poofs into clouds, and he realizes that it's just another illusion. He's being generative AI'd in real time, much to his dismay.
That's a joke. It's a very topical joke.
And much like generative AI, it immediately starts taking down everyone and everything with it. As the city starts breaking and shattering in dimensions and space, much like the electricity and water supply that generative AI takes up every second of it operating.
God.
I'm really on a roll right here. Much like
Kill
Steven
him, Jill.
falling down through...
Kill him, Jackie!
Yay! And Steven like falls through the like basically just hard shutting down blue screening Rose's room. And as he's falling down, we see the whale one last time who asks like, "What do you want, Steven?" And
when she says it in Rose's court's normal voice.
Yeah, that was a normal woman voice. That was the whale just made cooing noises earlier, but that voice was just Rose's voice. And that's when he basically gets launched out of the room. It feels like I guess he falls out, but like he falls out horizontally, so he lands into Garnet's lap. I took note of that because the wiki page said that it's possible that time passes differently because they all have the same poses, quote unquote, but it's a little too vague for my taste, so I'm just going to assume they were standing there anxious as always.
Don't think about it too much. Not a lot is established about how Rose's room works and how it interacts with real time.
The room exists
in this episode. As a matter of fact, I don't even think that's established in series how Rose's room works with time.
Yeah.
So it's not a question that any of us need to think about.
Yeah, it's more so for this.
However, if you are Rebecca Sugar and you are Ian Jones Courtley and you're listening to this podcast, I have a question. For the both of you.
That's very specific.
Why didn't you think more about the inner workings of your show? I'm kidding.
I was gonna make a headspace joke with Steven going into Rose's room. This is going to a new direction I would never have perceived.
No, I'm just being silly. Show production
Understandable.
is extremely, extremely difficult. There's only so much things you can give your time and priority to. And it's especially very difficult if the production is troubled. And from what we both have heard of Steven Universe's production, it definitely was troubled.
So what you're saying is, for the answer, is they probably did, but the one who didn't was Cartoon Network and or Warner Brothers.
Cartoon Network and Warner Brothers is the true villain in the Steven Universe story.
You know what? I respect that. Steven
They
gets.
just are. They have to live with that.
Well, no, they don't. Cartoon Network certainly doesn't. Anyway, horrible news about corporate mergers aside, Steven gets launched into Garnet.
Oh!
And speaking of merging, Steven bites into Garnet's arm, confirming that she is in fact real and not a donut that would poof into clouds. Which at that exact moment, Amethyst goes, "Yeah, Steven!" And then grabs Pearl's arm and immediately does the same to her, which makes her make a sound that I can only vaguely describe as "oh." uh, Very good. Sorry. And that's when Steven says the moral of the episode, where he like realizes that like if everything went your way, that would be like mad creepy actually, and that like it's perfectly good and reasonable to not have everything happen like that. And then the episode ends with them going like, actually, we're available now and can go to the mini golf. And then they go when Garnet wears a really big pair of pants, and Steven goes, "I get what I want," and the episode ends. I feel like we said most of what we thought about this episode
Well,
during.
this was a very fun episode. This is
That's a good
another
point.
episode that was actually very, very solid.
This was a.
The only thing that I didn't mention from my notes is the tight writing structure of season one. Like, this season is actually very good at setting up things, paying them off. It's good at the human gem it's good at the human gem combination, the plot combination. It's good at interweaving the plots of the human life and the gem life. This is probably the only season of the show that successfully does so, and I think this is one of the most successful episodes that showcases that. It not only showcases how good Steven Universe can be when it actually knows how to interweave the human and gem stuff, but it also said a lot about Steven as a person. It was very good at being an introspective look into the way he views other people and the way he views the society around him at this point in time.
Consciously or
This
not.
this is an episode that can basically only happen in season one. It is written very, very well to the constraints of Steven, and this, I'm going to say, is one of the most successful episodes of the show we have watched so far.
Oh, yeah. Like, this is. Like, it says something that we're saying so much about an episode that 90% of it is Steven by himself, essentially, and just reacting to everything happening around him.
It's a very good episode.
Yeah, no, this is just a banger. I'm so happy to do this revisit because it helped remind us of like the strengths of Steven Universe that we genuinely did fall in love with back in the day. And this is one of those times where, it's interesting. I think we talked about the art style shifts at some point, but like it feels pretty like set in by this point. And I made sure to double check, but season 1 has like 50 episodes. So this is pretty early on that it feels like the style of Steven Universe has been uh pretty like firmly set in. And I don't know, like I like this episode, and it makes me realize why I like these characters, why I like this world. Like, even though, like, clearly I've had my critiques of it, harsh critiques of it over the years, and this is
We
given.
both have said some very unkind things in Steven Universe in this podcast so far.
but I'm happy to still like have these moments where we can genuinely just look at it and go like, that was good. I'm happy I saw that.
This might be one of the best episodes of the show, but we'll see.
We'll see. We'll
Because it
see.
only goes downhill from here.
We were just talking about the positive. Okay, okay, I get it.
It genuinely does. I'm so sorry. I mean,
Okay.
Cartoon Network is ultimately at fault for that, but we have to just recognize that this is some of the best the show is going to be.
All right. We'll. No, no, no. I don't know. I kind of dropped off of Steven Universe at a weird time where like, uh, we'll get there when we get there. I actually don't know the episode we stopped watching, but besides the point. Yeah, I don't know. I had a very nice time today to watching this episode, and I'm glad I watched it.
Yeah, this was really good.
Yeah, and I think we kind of said all of our thoughts already. I don't really think I have much more to say.
Yeah, the only thing that I didn't mention from my notes was like the tight writing of season one, and now I
Yeah,
gushed about that. And it does deserve a lot of credit. Like, this episode does showcase. I think this is actually one of the best episodes of season one because it does just showcase that formula that they had in season one so beautifully. It was very tightly. It was very tightly. It was a very tight episode. There wasn't a lot of room to mess things up. Like, this is a very hard kind of episode to pull off, and I think this is one of the most successful examples of a sandbox episode.
yeah, that's a good point. Where these concepts in fiction probably always fascinate people from the ability to experience things in a projection room situation, but it is always fun to see like where does it go wrong, and that's perhaps we enjoy it even more now that we have the knowledge of generative AI like leaking into many corners of our life and showing the very obvious faults of like generative AI uh,
Yep.
in every spec of the word. And it shows how like these stories still can work, but as long as you're aware and under the impression that what matters most is that the character experiencing them is an experience in of itself, which I don't know, I'm just glad to observe that. Maybe it's also speaking because the story that we want to write involves that kind of scenario a lot too. Why am I getting a call? But regardless, yeah, I think we've said our piece, and Jacqueline and Jill will go down a hill and fetch a pail of water.
I forgot the rest of that. Jacqueline fell down and broke her crown, and Jill came tumbling after.
Well, yeah, that's what happens when you split a new altar.
That. Oh, okay. We should call it. This was a really good episode. I
I
liked it a
can't top
lot.
that, much like my crowd. Everyone go away. But you can find me at TransPanda1 on Tumblr or TransPandaR on Tumblr or Twitter. And this is Alex.
Hi. My Patreon will be linked down below. Please consider financially supporting if you have some free and spare change. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody. I'm funny. Bye. If I could begin to be half of what you think of me, I could do about anything. I could even learn how to love like you.